All right, I'd love to talk to you about our research journey of employment. We've done a lot of work on that. I'd love to show you little snippets of some of the publications that we've published and what that has led to in terms of changing the lives of people with MS. So I'm the project director of the Australian MS Longitudinal Study, as Wendy mentioned. It's been going since 2002. I took over the reins in 2014 from Rex Simmons. And since then, we've done some beautiful work, continued his work on employment. He started it back then, and I've continued that component. When we talk about working or not working, work gives a lot of connections, and it also provides financial security, gives us a sense of identity, purpose. It's a reason to get up in the morning. It gives us enjoyment, socialization, and also that feeling of benefit to others. But of course, as a person with MS, that comes with with challenges. How do you manage all of that when you have all of these symptoms? Often they're invisible, sometimes they're visible, sometimes the workplace needs to be adjusted. It's challenging. So there's some positive statistics. We published that a couple of years ago. It's a paper that we called Closing the Gap. We basically show that employment rates have increased over time. So in 2010, 48% of people with MS were employed versus 63% in the general population. But a couple of years later, that already has gone down substantially. 57% was employed and compared to 61% in the general population. So you can see that that gap is closing, that is incredibly important, and the gap was even smaller for women than it was for men. Next year we're hoping to repeat this analysis and see whether we've gone even further with that. Age of retirement has increased. 51 was the age of retirement for people with MS in 2007, and that increased to 57 in 2013. So a beautiful increase. Also, the more people are returning to work, so 4.6% in 2007 returned to work and 9.7% in 2013. So a nice success story. So of course you wonder why would that be? Effective therapies. The disease-modifying therapies have made a huge impact. And we published one paper where we could show that. You can see with the diagram that, yes, we've categorized the disease-modifying therapies in the original injectable therapies. And this is 2010, and it's gone down to 2015. But if you look at the category 2 and 3 immunotherapies, which are a lot more effective, but also have a higher risk profile associated with them, you see that they have substantially increased between the period of 2010 and 2015. And when we ask people about their perceptions and about their work attendance and productivity, they basically told us that the people who used the most effective disease-modifying therapies, they were 2 to 3 times more likely to report an increased amount of work, an increased work attendance, and an increased work productivity compared to people who used the injectable therapies. And this work was done based on data from 2015, and not all the disease modifying in between 2015 and now, there would have been more disease modifying therapies available, but the ones that had the largest effect sizes were fingolimod and natalizumab. So that's really good to see. And we've done some more work on that, where we looked more longitudinally rather than cross-sectionally. And this was work that was commissioned by Biogen, and they are the ones who bring up natalizumab. And when we did a very thorough analysis, a longitudinal analysis, we looked at 23 different, what we call patient-reported outcomes, basically ranging from severity in symptoms, 13 different types of symptoms, their overall quality of life, their employment status, their disability level. And out of all of those 23 outcomes, natalizumab was basically provided superior effects compared to any other DMT. So we grouped all the other DMTs together, and we also did very specific analysis where we looked at one treatment versus another. Here is the example of work productivity loss. So what you can see here in the blue is that the work productivity loss has decreased over a 2-year period for the people who were using natalizumab. And for those who used another disease-modifying therapy, that work productivity loss had increased a little bit. And this difference was significant. So we did a similar analysis for all of these outcomes. It resulted in a report of about 60 pages, but I've just summarized one little snippet out of that big report. But again, it shows that the highly effective disease-modifying therapies have a positive influence over time on work outcomes. In terms of work productivity loss, overall, we look at two different things. Absenteeism is when you literally cannot go to work for a particular reason. And out of the people, all of the people who were working, about 18% said that they had any absenteeism in the last 4 weeks. And on average, it was 0.6 days. So not massive, but still substantial. The other thing we looked at is presenteeism. So you go to work, but you're not feeling great, so your productivity is not as good as it should be. So 52% reported to have any presenteeism, and on average this was 1.9 days less than full work productivity. So then if we ask the question about what drives the productivity loss, what are sort of the main factors? Of course, some of this is not surprising to a person with MS. But the key thing for us was to really work out what are the symptoms that have most impact. And these are our top four. We asked for 13 symptoms, but a lot of symptoms sort of clustered together and are correlated with each other. So we grouped them together according to those clusters. So the top one was fatigue and cognitive symptoms. Second one, pain and sensory symptoms have a big impact on work productivity loss. Difficulties with walking, balance and spasticity, as well as feelings of anxiety and depression. So they were the ones that came out to be most strongly associated with work productivity loss. We also looked at factors in the sort of the work environment. We looked at psychological safety. How safe do you feel to report that you have MS, to ask for assistance? We asked about the work difficulties that they had, the challenges that they had in the workplace. And out of all of those, the ones that came out were self-esteem at work is actually incredibly important. And you can imagine if you live with a disease like this, that your self-esteem gets knocked around a bit. That also has influence in the confidence of performing your work activities. Incredibly important. And also end up with some challenging work relationships. With those increasing symptoms, you need to communicate your MS in the workplace. You might get some challenging scenarios. So there were other factors that were also associated with work productivity loss. The next thing we did is we looked at change in work productivity. So overall, what you see here, we basically did an analysis where we had the computer work out in which group people were falling. So at the top we have the people who have sort of a full work productivity. They're at 100%. And this is a group that has mild work productivity loss, and these ones have a moderate work productivity loss. But what you can see overall, they're pretty flat lines. This is over time, from 2015 to 2019. And it doesn't change much over time. These are pretty flat lines, which is incredibly positive. But that is at a group level. And you might wonder what that looks like at the individual level. It's more like this. So that's a little bit more messy. And as we know, life is a bit more messy than just nice, pretty graphs that you can see here at the top. So even at the people who have full work productivity, you know, it fluctuates a bit. And for the other people, you can see substantial fluctuations. We've only measured it from year to year, so there might be more fluctuations from day to day, from month to month. And when we looked at this a bit further, we actually found that in terms of maintaining your work productivity and what drives change in work productivity loss, it was a change in symptoms. So the similar symptoms came up, but it was that the change in symptoms drove the change in work productivity loss, but not so much the absolute level. So it didn't matter so much where you were on the scale. If you were able to control your symptoms and keep them steady, you're in a much better position. So my recommendations to maximize work productivity. Not very responsive, this little thing. Which way do I need to focus? I don't know where the machine is. Actually, come on. Anybody know? Where should I focus? There? Keep using your prescribed disease modifying therapies. Probably not surprising. Hello? Yes. Manage your symptoms well. So the stabilization of symptoms, as I was talking about before, and of course, improve them if it's possible. Work with your team, work with your team of health professionals to do that as well as possible, but also self-management, incredibly important. Improve workplace relationships, so communicate effectively in the workplace, incredibly important. Teaching yourself to communicate well or learning from others how to do that is very useful. And maintain confidence in performing your work activities. So consider modifications to your work demands or consider modifications of your work environment. What can you do yourself to improve those things? So to put all of this together, we basically created an online course called MS Work Smart, and it has 9 modules where we run through symptom management to communication around MS in the workplace, to your colleagues, to your employer. Talk about disclosure. What do you disclose? When do you disclose? How much do you disclose? Etc. We talk about your thoughts, how your thoughts have impact on your actions and how you can modify some of the thoughts that you have. Also, how can you manage all your stress outside the workplace, within the workplace, and how can you modify your work environment. So this online course, we've just put it together, it's all gone to ethics, so we're now going to do a couple of studies to work out that it really is helpful for people with MS. But here, I thought I had one more slide on this. Yeah, there it is. So basically we use text, images, hypothetical examples, quotes, tips. We have videos where you can learn from peers and experts. We have quizzes for self-insight, and we have tasks to assist with implementing the learnings into practice. So really aiming to assist people with MS who are working as best as possible. Alongside that, we are using a symptoms app This is an app that I have developed where you can track symptoms, but you can also track some of the behaviours that you have or the things that you might like to change. And then you can graph that all together in one visualization to work out whether there are particular patterns. You can also track your medications to see whether any of the medications that you're using, or whether an increase in dose, whether it works better or worse, etc. So this symptom tracker will be used alongside MS WorkSmart, but we will also be using them for other research. And once we feel that it works really well, we hopefully will throw that out to everybody to use. So if you want to get involved, Australian MS Longitudinal Study, if you haven't signed up, please do. It's incredibly valuable, incredibly useful, and we're hoping that all the research that comes out of it will actually be of benefit to you at some point in time. You can consider providing feedback on MS WorkSmart. It's not out in the open yet, but we've asked some people to provide feedback, so these people are going through each of the modules and tell us what they think of it and whether we've forgotten particular things. Same with the My Symptoms app. You can register your interest at the trade tables. And of course, if you get an invitation to participate in MS WorkSmart as part of our feasibility study or our randomized controlled trial, please consider participating. Of course, all of this can't happen. As you can see, massive number of people. Also, the project funding, MS Australia has been fantastic with supporting the Australian MS Longitudinal Study for such a long time. So I definitely want to thank them. So thank you very much for listening.